So we're closing the Mishnah of Sotah. We're going through a litany, almost a litany of regret. What can you call it? A eulogy or a litany of regret, a eulogy, a lament. That's the right word for it. It's a lament of everything that is no longer functioning properly. So we're describing social decline, really. And we can see, by the way, in this picture of social decline, a mirror image of the two issues which are really the focus of the rest of the tractate. So the Sota and the investigation of the kind of the unknown murderer. Yeah, they're both signs of social or communal breakdown in some way. And now, at the end of the tractate, we're talking about a much larger exposition of social breakdown. And we began with the list of sages. In the beginning of this 15th Mishnah, we went through the list of sages and the result of their deaths, the glory of the Torah ceasing, goodness ceasing from the world, locusts coming, troubles multiplying, gradually, wealth declining. And now, as this Mishnah closes, it talks just more generally about the type of social decline that we're experiencing. And of course, parallel to the this is parallel to the destruction of the land of Israel by the Romans. So the rabbis are living through enormous social change. The blows that they suffered were much greater than the blows of the Holocaust. Just to put this into, the perspective how we feel about the last 100 years, that they suffered far greater blows. And maybe this lament for the past is a reflection of the blows that they suffered. We're going to begin this section of the Mishnah and we're going to end it with two sayings of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. So one which is negative and one which is positive. Thank heavens we're going to end on a positive note. But begin with we're going to begin with Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's lament, which is then followed up by parallel laments from other sages. That's the arc of this part of the Mishnah. We're going to begin with Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. We're going to go to other sages who mirror his emotions. And then we're going to end with Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, but with a different tone, a different voice, a voice of hope. And of course, we remember at the beginning of the chapter a debate between the sages as to whether the degeneration that was happening was a result of let's say external action. Was it because the Romans had destroyed the temple, or was it because we did not keep the right mitzvot? And we'll see this tension play out in the words of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, but it'd be quite clear by the end of the tractate which side of the debate Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair falls on, and we close with his view. But let's begin anyway with his lament. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Omer, Miyom shecharav Beit Hamikdash. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair says, from the day the temple was destroyed, Boshu chaverim uvnei chaverim v'chafu roshan. Scholars and freemen were ashamed. They covered their heads. They no. I guess we're going to learn later that there's no more rebuke. Maybe they were afraid to stand up and speak. Chafu roshan. They covered their heads. Nizdalalu anshe maaseh b'maasehem. Men of wondrous deeds were just disregarded. V'gavru bale zroa. Violent men, people of power, people of violence, came out on top. Really interesting sort of insight into our own age. People of strength came out on top. V'gavru bale lashon hara. And people who spoke Well, I've translated Lashon Hara, I've translated as slander. Maybe it means slippery speakers, or maybe it doesn't mean slanderers. But anyway, Balei Lashon Ra Gavru. These people rose in power. Ve'ein Doresh, ve'ein Mevakesh. And nobody expounds and nobody seeks. So what are we going to do? Al ma'alanu lihisha'en al avinu shebashamayim. What do we rely on? We rely on our Father in heaven. So this is Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's lament. And we'll see now that it's repeated twice by other sages before we get back to his closing words. So let's look at the first repetition. Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, Rabbi Eliezer the Great. I presume this is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, who essentially lived through this transitional period between the destruction of the temple and the restoration of Jewish thought in Yavne, and of course then the final Roman war at the time of Bar Kokhba. Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol Omer. So Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, Miyom shecharav Beit HaMikdash Sharyu Chachamim Lemifvei Kasafraya. Very interesting. The Mishnah normally is written in Hebrew. Almost the whole of the Mishnah, the whole of it, as far as I know, is written in Hebrew. But here we're gonna move into Aramaic. Maybe this was a day-to-day lament of the time. But we're going to move into our Aramaic. Sharyu Chachamim Lemifvei Kasafraya. So the sages began to be like scribes. V'safraya Kadalmidaya, and the scribes like students. V'talmidaya Ka'ama, and the students like just ordinary people. Ve'ama Ka'amei Azla V'navla, and the people like people who were just going on and degenerating. And then he closes, Ve'ein Doresh Ve'ein Mevakesh, and no one expounds and nobody speaks, nobody seeks. Ve'amar lanu lihisha'en al avinu shebashamayim. And upon who shall we depend? On our Father in heaven. So here's Rabbi Eliezer's mirroring of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Let's carry on. Be'ikvot HaMashiach. So we're going to be in the footsteps of the Be'ikvot HaMashiach, in the footsteps or on the heels of the Mashiach. Really interesting view of the world. But this seems to be their view of the state that they could see themselves in. Chatzpah Yisgei. Chatzpah is chutzpah. Chatzpah is Hebrew for chutzpah, insolence. Chatzpah Yisgei. We're still in at this point we're still in Aramaic, but we're going to go back to Hebrew in a sec. Chatzpah Yisgei. So chutzpah will increase. Ve'yoka ya'amer. Costs will rise. Inflation, again, really echoes of our times. Hagefen titin periyah ve'hayayin beyoker. The vine will yield its fruit, but wine's going to be expensive. Basically, costs are just going up now. Ve'hamachut tehei minut. The government will turn to heresy. I wonder whether this is a reference to early Christianity, to the take-up of early Christianity by the Roman government. Possibly. Hamachut tehei minut. The government will turn to heresy. The ein tochachat. There's going to be no rebuke. No one's going to be able to stand up and say what should happen. Beit vad yeliznut. A meeting place. This must refer to a meeting place of scholars, right? Beit vad. It's a meeting place. Yelis nut. The meeting place will be used for whoredom. V'hagalil yecherav. The Galil will be destroyed. V'hagavlan yishom. I think the Gavlan is the border area. Ve'anshei hagalil yisovu me'ir le'ir ve'lo yitchananu. And the dwellers of the Galil will beg. They'll go round from city to city begging, and no one is going to take pity of them. V'chochmat sofrim tisrach. The wisdom of the learned will just rot, will stink. Ve'irei chet yima esu, and the fears of sin will be despised. Veha emet tehei ne'ederet, and the truth will be absent, will be gone. I mean, it's extraordinary to actually to read this lament, and of course to think about things going on in our own time. The learning will rot, the fears of sin will be despised, the truth will be absent. And then in this next, and he's going to go on to talk about youth. Na'arim yalbinu zakanim. Youth will put old men to shame. I guess the youth are going to be poking fun at the old men. Zakenim yamdu min haktanim. The old will stand up in the presence of the young. It feels like the young people have stopped standing up in the presence of old people. And now we're going to have a quote. This is a long quote from Micha. But Micha, similarly, is inveighing against social breakdown in the society that he sees, which is, let's think through the timings. It's 700 years before the time of the Mishnah. So we're gonna echo Micha from 600 years earlier. Ben the Babel Av, the young dishonors the father, but Kama Ima, the daughter against her mother, Kala b'chamotah, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Oive ish anshe ve'tor, a man's enemies are the men of his own house. A community, households are going to be set one against the other. This is Micha. And now back to the Mishnah. Doresh panav domot kelev. This is almost untranslatable. Those who seek his face will be like the dog. I presume we're talking about the face of God here, but I don't, it's difficult to translate. Doresh panav domot kelev. Seekers of his face will be like dogs. Ve'al malanu lihisha'en, and upon whom shall we depend? This is our refrain. Al Avinu Shebashamayim. So those are the laments. And who are we going to depend on? On our Father in heaven. At least that's the situation so far. But Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair has a different theology. And we're going to close with Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, and we're going to close actually with his view on how we address social breakdown. And again, these words are so, we read these words and we are struck just by how relevant they are to today. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Omer. So we're back to Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, and he says, Zrizut mevial enthusiasm leads to cleanliness. And we know this, right? If anyone's cleaned a kitchen, right? Enthusiasm leads to cleanliness. Unakiyut lidei prishut, and cleanliness leads to separation. Ufrishut lidei tara, and separation leads to purity. Tara lidei kedusha, purity leads to holiness. Kedusha lidei anava, holiness leads to humility. Anava lidei yirat chet, humility to fear of sin. Yirat chet lidei chasidut, fear of sin leads to, chasidut. I've translated here as piety, but it's, let's call it piety. Chasidut lidei ruach hakodesh, piety to the Holy Spirit. Ruach HaKodesh lidei tchiyat hametim, the Holy Spirit to the resurrection of the dead. Tchiyat metim ba'a al yedei Eliyahu zachur latov. And the resurrection of the dead comes from Eliyahu. May his memory be for good. So we begin with zrizut, with enthusiasm, and we go through cleanliness, to purity, to holiness, to humility, to fear of sin, to piety, to the Holy Spirit, and to the resurrection of the dead. And this all comes from Eliyahu Zachur Latov. This is the poetic close of the Mishnah, of the Sotah. And this Mishnah, this tractate, of course, has dealt with these disturbing, terrible images. Tragic situations. And yet it ends with this note of optimism and positivism and this note that places, of course, the responsibility for social cohesion, of social order on every single individual among us. Zrizut meviala lidei nikiut, enthusiasm leads to cleanliness. Anybody can take on anybody can take on those characteristics. So that's the end of the Tractate of Sotah. Let's just recite the Hadran alach Masechet Sotah. We will return to you, Masechet Sotah. So we're not going away. Hadran alach Masechet Sotah will return to you, v'hadrach alan, and you will return to us. Datan alach Masechet Sotah, our mind is on you, Masechet Sotah, v'datach alan, and your mind is on us. Lo nit nashei minach Masechet Sotah. You will not be forgotten by us, Masechet Sotah, or we will not forget you. Velo tit nashei minan, and you will not forget us. You will not forget us who studied you. Lo ba'alman hadain, velo ba'alma de ati. Not in this world and not in the world to come.